This particular project is one that has been around a while, and we're glad to be able to bring you the next piece of this. This actually began probably about 7 or 8 years ago with discussions at the Transportation Commission when we were talking about people's concerns about how do we cross the highways in this community in a safe manner. We had conversations with the Idaho Transportation Department back at that time. Dave Couch was the traffic engineer for District 2 in Lewiston then, and he supported the concept, as did others at ITD. Eventually, it made its way to the Paradise Path Task Force, now the Moscow Pathways Commission, and they recommended that we pursue an underpass of State Highway 8 at White Avenue. It was also a student capstone project at the University of Idaho that did some of the initial work on what it might look like and whether or not it might be feasible from a hydraulic perspective to put a pathway system under an existing bridge underneath the state highway. So we have pursued this over the years, and you've seen it come to you in the past in terms of grant applications. We were successful in obtaining funding through a grant to pursue the project. So the step we're at now is the design services contract to allow us to proceed with design with the intent of constructing this in an upcoming construction season. So just to help orient folks just a little bit, this is the intersection of State Highway 8, otherwise known as the Troy Highway for those folks on that side of town, and White Avenue. So the Tesoro gas station located here, Paradise Path passing through here, and this is the multi-lane concrete section of State Highway 8. The situation you see out there, this is a fairly recent picture, but it looks often like this, where we have 2 lanes of traffic in either direction. There are some bike lanes in either direction in this section. Right turn pockets for the folks turning onto Steiner that are heading eastbound at that point, and a location that is not terribly friendly to pedestrians that are crossing the highway. And we see quite a few of them, frankly, that are trying to make it over to the gas station and to other businesses there on the north section of White Avenue. And so the concept really is to take advantage of the fact that we've got a trail in close proximity to the bridge that the Highway Department has built over the years that crosses over Paradise Creek, so which is in this opening right here. So that gives you a little different view. So again, the highway's up here. I'm kind of standing on the path when the picture's taken. You can see this opening that exists under the bridge and the creek passing through there. Part of the big questions have been over the years, is there sufficient hydraulic capacity that we could lose a little bit with the construction of a path? And the answer is yes, if the path is low enough that at certain times of the year it will be underwater. So under higher flood events in midwinter, early spring, it's likely that section of that path that would be going under here would be closed for several days or maybe a week at a time, depending on what the water levels in the creek are doing. So the overall project, as proposed and as for which we've received grant funding now, is to actually do more than just the bridge crossing itself, but to start with a path extension, if you will, off of the Paradise Path, cross under the highway, and then run along the north side of White Avenue all the way out to the area of the fairgrounds here across from the East Side Marketplace. And that would be consistent with our desire to improve multimodal transportation within the network of the overall city, putting in some pedestrian and bike facilities along the side of a street that don't currently have any, and just overall improvement in connections for bike and pedestrian traffic within the community. Zooming in on the bridge location a little bit, again, the intersection here, this is a sketch that was put together that shows generally what the path might look like coming down off of Paradise Path. At this point, it will be down at creek level or just above it, going underneath the structure of the highway, and then coming back up the east bank to the point where it's back up at street level, connection back to the intersection with the sidewalks, and then the path continuing on to the east along the north side of White Avenue, working its way along here on these sections, and eventually coming all the way to the Blaine Street intersection, and then continuing on over to this one shows basically the entrance to the fairgrounds and also the entrance to the North Latah County Highway District shop at that spot. So that's in general what the project is. This is a rendering that was done, I believe, by the student group back in, about 2009 or 10, if I recall, quite a few years ago now. This is actually would be looking south, and so the Paradise Path would be on the other side of the highway, coming down, as I mentioned, and then running underneath the bridge, and then back up this bank to White Avenue. The crossing itself would have to be low enough so that we've got sufficient height for somebody on a bicycle to ride through here without meeting the girders above with their helmet. So we have to make sure it's low enough for that. As you drive it lower to give that sufficient space, then, as I said earlier, sometimes we'll be underwater here. Obviously, we'll have some seasonal closures for this type of a structure. This is not an uncommon situation. There are many of these around the country, and they often experience temporary closures during high water events.
Pullman has one?
Pullman has one. If you're on the main highway 272 going into Pullman on the viaduct as you're coming into the downtown, the second bridge crosses over the South Fork of the Palouse River, and on the west bank, in the east bank in that location, there is I think it's only a 4 or 5 foot concrete sidewalk that passes under that structure. It's probably a little low, but they do have one, and under really high events, that one also goes underwater. So what is before you this evening is a contract with Terra Graphics, a firm here in the city of Moscow. They have done some work on this previously in that they did some hydraulic analysis for us to confirm what the flow would be through the bridge and then what the hydraulic capacity of the opening is, and if we were to construct this path, what effects that would have on the overall flow through the structure. So they've done some work previously for us on the project. What's before you tonight is the contract to actually perform the design services for the project as a whole. And so I guess with that, I would stand for any questions that you may have.
This is a really terrific project. Like you said, been talking about it for 9 years to get this thing done, to get this wrapped up, to get the professional service agreement done in January of 2018, and get the construction in summer of 20. A year from now, it'd be terrific. Walter.
Les, could you go back to your slide that showed the detail of the intersection? Well, that one. Mm-hmm. Is it anticipated that this structure will be used to encourage people not to cross at street level over to the mini mart?
Yeah, we really.
Is that the thinking?
Yeah, I think we're trying to provide an opportunity for folks to cross the system in a more comfortable way. And we have not identified a desire at this point to say don't cross on the highway. It is still available for crossings, but I think our approach would be to encourage folks by making them aware that there is a under-highway crossing available to use that crossing instead of using the highway itself.
Okay.
Now, as we get further into this, we could change our perspective and say, just go use this. The challenge that you run into, though, is that there's that period of time where we maybe are closed.
Correct.
Then we need to cross above if people want to do so. So I'm a little leery of saying don't cross here, but encourage.
Well, with it being said that it's an alternative, a preferred alternative, you've got the sidewalk coming back up to the intersection on the north side.
Here, yes.
Would it make sense to Y, as in the letter Y, on the south side so that, yes, instead of just coming from the west, you also have an entrance from the east?
Yeah, the challenge is the grade. We're coming up quite a ways in a short distance and trying to keep the grades at a reasonable level. You kind of need the distance to get over here before you actually finally really get back up to the path level. And if we try to cut it more to the southeast, I just don't know that we can make the grades work. We'll look at that further.
Steps?
But that would be an alternative, would be steps, just for a cutoff. We do have a drainage channel through here that we're trying to work with and a culvert shown there. So we'd have to modify that concept a bit, which can be done. So yeah, we can certainly look at that and see if there's some opportunity perhaps to give us a little bit of a cutoff there. Probably
try to encourage people to use it and not go across the highway.
Yeah, we're not talking great distances to go a little bit further and then hook the U-turn back, but we could look at that in a little closer detail as we get into the design, certainly.
Other questions for Les? Mark?
I'd make a motion to approve the professional services agreement with Terra Graphics in the amount of $58,522.75.
Second.
Is it you saying?
She didn't
Gina?
remember.
Okay. We got a motion by Art and a second by Gina to approve the professional service contract with Terra Graphics in the amount of $58,522.75. Start with you, Walter.
Aye.
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 There you